Hello there, you're welcome again to this class. Last class, we talked about Moho key panels and toolbars. Today, we're going to talk about Moho layer types. Let's dive right in. So first and foremost, to select a new layer, come over here to this icon and you click. So the first two kind of layers are vector and image layers. These are the two main kinds of layers in Moho where you can create your artwork. So let's draw something on our vector layer. I can draw a circle, for example. Vector layers have many benefits from image layers. First of all, vector layers can actually be modified. So if I were to draw a shape, I can modify the points in my layer. So let us select this. I can move the points around, and this modifies the shape of our object. Which is very interesting. Another benefit of vector layers are you can scale vector layers in and out and not lose any quality, because vector layers are not pixelated. So vector layers can be magnified to an indefinite amount and then still retain its quality. Another thing is that vector layers are quite small, so they take up less space in your Moho file. Secondly, we have image layers. Image layers are basically pictures. So I could import an image in my image layer, as you can see here. Let's drag this down. So we have this. Next up, we have image sequence. Image sequences basically are a group of images that I can import into my animation. So let's say I have already created images somewhere else. I could select all the images and import them. This gives us one image layer with all the images together. These are all individual frames, so that's quite interesting. As you can see, our animation lasts for a very short time. I could adjust when my animation starts and stops by going to this second option, which is the sequencer. This is my image layer. I can adjust this, so I want my animation to begin from here and then end around here. So that's what's going to happen. You could also see that when the animation gets to the end of the layer, it disappears. I could make this to keep staying on screen by opening up the layer settings, and then I go to image, and then I do persist on first frame. I'll apply that. So when it gets to the end frame, it's going to just remain on screen. Same for the beginning frame. Make sure you hit apply. So let's play this and see. So let's say we want to loop our movie indefinitely. So we want it to keep looping even after it's finished. We'll select this and then press apply. And then it just keeps looping back and forth. We also have another option here, frames per second. So this frame per second is going to be basically from our project settings, but let's say we want it to last a bit longer. Maybe we want to make it quite slow per se. I could adjust the frames per second by saying maybe 12 frames per second. That's going to make it twice as long. It's much slower than before because now it's half the frame rate, which is going to make it way longer. Okay, that's a quick overview on the image sequence layer. Next up, we're going to go to group. I would first of all select this and use group. So a group layer can contain many layers inside it. It's like a folder. So I could select these layers and then drop them in the group layer. I could also collapse it whenever you transform the layer, you're going to transform everything inside the group as well. So take note of that. The next one we have is the group with selection. So I will select the 2 layers I want to be grouped, and then I select group with selection. It's going to group the 2 layers I have selected. Let's collapse that. Next up we have bone. A bone layer literally is how we create our character rigs. So let's say I will quickly do some drawings. I will disable these layers. Let's have just this opened, and then I'm going to create a vector layer. Let's quickly draw a character like a stick figure. So I'll draw this. It's my character. That's the head. Let's use square. So we draw this, and then maybe we'll do this. Like this. Move it around. Rotate this. I'm going to copy this. Go to edit, copy, and paste. Then I'm going to rotate the second one here and drag it here. So let's say this is our character. Alright, I've not given it hand yet, but I'm going to just show you a quick example. To rig this character, I will drag this layer into my bone layer, and now I can come here and add a new bone. I would advise you start the bone with the waist up. This goes up and this goes up, and this is another one here. Then I would advise when you do that, you come here, click this, and then if you have a hand for the character, you probably want to draw the bones for the hand next. Then next up here, I'll click and drag. So next, select this, and then I'll draw this. So now we have our character. We can now come here and manipulate the bones. Of course, this is a very rudimentary example, but that's how you create character rigs for your character. We're going to dive deeper into this later on, but that's what the bone layer does. Next up we have switch. A switch is essentially like a group layer, just that this time the switch only displays one image or vector file per time. So let's go to our timeline, and if I were to create a new vector, and draw a shape, I'm going to put this rig into my switch, and then my vector into my switch. You drag and drop. Now you see that we can only see one thing at a time. I could right click, and then I would see the 2 layers I can display. So if I click this, I'm going to only view this, and if I come here, I'll view the second one. That's what switch does, and this can be animated over time. Let's say from this frame I want this to show, and then from this frame I want this to show. So if I were to play my animation, this would show, and then when it comes here, the next one will show. That's what the switch layer does. You could also adjust what is going to be visible in the window, and then you have switch selection. The same thing like before. Now we can see what is being switched. So you could use this or this. Okay, that's for switch layer. Next up we have frame by frame layer. Frame by frame layer is just like a group layer or like a switch, but what's different now is that we have these options here. These options are for creating, removing, and then duplicating the frames. So let's say I were to come here and click plus, add a new frame, and then I would come here and draw something, for example. Alright, you can also make sure you enable these two so you have fill and stroke. So let's undo that. Select this and then draw. Okay, then we're gonna move here. We'll click plus. Maybe we'll draw the ball like this, for example. Okay, then we'll come down here again, and then we will click plus, and then we draw the last. Obviously, now you can see we have an animation of a ball coming down. While drawing, if you want to see the previous frame, you could enable onion skin, which is this option here, and I can see the previous frame and then draw something new. So that's what the frame by frame layer does. We're going to go deeper into this later on. Next up we have the particle layer. The particle layer is a very interesting layer because in this layer we can create particles. I'll show you a demonstration. I'll create a new vector and drop it into the particle layer, and then let's say I were to draw like a circle. Okay, I want to disable these other layers, so I only see one layer at a time. So you open up your particle settings by double clicking this and then go to particles. These settings can make different effects like fire, smoke, so on and so forth, even rain. So play around with the settings and it can give you various effects. But by default, let's see what it gives us. You could see what it has given us. So you can really have very fine effects based on what you have inside the particle layer. Alright, next up, let's look at the notes layer. Note layer is a very interesting layer because it essentially just creates notes for you. These notes can be given to someone in your team or just for you to take note of something in your scene. Let's drag this up here, and obviously this layer is not going to be rendered in the final animation. If I were to do a preview, it's not going to show up in my final render. Next up, we have audio. Audio essentially gives us the option to import an audio file. Let's say I open up something, it pops up in my timeline. You can see here. To adjust the audio duration, go to my sequencer and I can adjust the start and stop from here. Next up, we have patch. A patch layer is very interesting because the patch layer you can create a very nice effect. I will demonstrate that for you right now. Let's hide these other layers. So let's say I'll create a new layer and I was creating a character rig for a character. Let's let this be the hand. Let's have a new layer. This is going to be the other part of the hand, maybe this. So let's say this is my character and I have created all these body parts for the character. Okay, and maybe you will have a new layer maybe this part is going to be the arm, or where the fingers are going to be. So let's say this is someone's arm. We're drawing a very simple character. I could create a patch. So a patch essentially removes the line of the overlapping shape. So for example, let's say first and foremost I want to remove this line. I will select the layer and then I go to patch, and I'm going to target the second layer, which is this, and press OK. If I were to adjust this, you'd see it covers up the line. So we just place that correctly. Okay, now you'd see that line has disappeared. So this is not really giving you the most accurate view, so I will render this, and you see that now that line has disappeared because this is the patch. You could actually disable some of the other layers to see what it's creating, which is this. So that's very interesting. We're going to talk about this later on. This is very useful when you're creating a rig for like a character. So maybe you're drawing your character out and you want to hide some lines in between the joints. You could use this patch layer to hide those lines. Next up we have text. Text is quite simple. It creates text for you. You'd also have word balloons to your text. So all these settings are for the font, the scale, the colors, and everything you would want to adjust. Once you're done, you press OK. And that will create the text for you. The last layer is a hidden layer, which is a 3D layer. Come to File, Import, OBJ 3D Object. You can import a 3D file in your scene, but the file you import must be an OBJ 3D file. Open up your OBJ file, and then you see the 3D scene. Now I think we could use the stacked windows so we could see in various views. I could come here and orbit around my object, and you could see my 3D object. I could also translate or move my object around. You see my virtual camera, which is this. And then I could make some adjustments, rotate it, maybe scale it down a bit. And yeah, it's quite interesting. So that's all the layers we have. Next up, we're going to go deeper into the layer panels and how we can quickly walk around with the layers. So see you then.